Alright, and welcome everybody. We're trying something a little bit different today. What I'm attempting to do is just something a little bit more relaxing. I've heard from quite a few people that my voice can be pretty soothing sometimes. So you get a nice little look at my home screen here. I meant to go in here. So this is a little game that I like to play sometimes. It's whenever I'm relaxing or just hanging around, I'll always use it. It's this little number puzzle game, and today it's just something really simple. I just want to show you guys how to use the game, how to play it for yourself. The name of the game is right there in the middle of the screen, so funny enough, it is just called nonogram.com. No, I've never been to the website, never wanted to go to the website. There is a premium version of this game, unfortunately. As you can see down there, restore purchases, and just a couple other things down here. But I only got it just because I play the game all the time, and I don't like looking at ads, and I also don't want to have to turn on airplane mode every time I go into a game. So what I'm going to do for you guys is actually get into teaching you how to play. So we're going to start a new game here. I'm going to put it on easy. Now, I've been playing this game forever, so I know a lot about how to play it. But now that all of you guys are new, I want to try to give you the best instructions that I can in order to let you know. So right here, we have a grid that's about 10 by 10. We have 10 squares going horizontally, 10 squares going vertically. Now the numbers on the sides, they show how many of the squares in that row will be colored in. Now, the name of the game, or I guess the point of the game, is how do I know which squares are colored in and which ones are left blank? And that's what I'm going to try to teach you guys today. So, first things first, let's look down. On this left side, we're going to go down to the third row where this 9 is. Now, a part of the game is strategy. We see that there are 10 squares total in this row. Well, one of them already has an X. So you do 10 minus 1, that's 9. Well, it says here that 9 of them are colored, and there are 9 left. So that must mean that all of these are colored in. And look at that, we were right. And when you see here on the left, now that I've colored in everything that I have to, the row will go dark. And once it does that, it means that you're good to go, you don't have to do anything else. And as you may have noticed, these ones over in the top right, their row is also in blank, but they also have some blank spaces. But what that means is all these blank spaces are supposed to be blank. So we're going to click down here, change that to the X, make sure it's on the X, and we're just going to swipe down just like this, really nice and slow. Now, here's where a little bit of the interesting part of the game comes in, because you're not always going to have things that obvious. So we got to say, how else do we find out, you know? Well, let's look at this 2 in the top right, next to the ones that we just finished clearing. Well, we have one square in, but we don't know which other one is. But the thing you should know is, if it's going to be colored in, they're going to be consecutive, so they have to be touching each other pretty much. So you see all the ones in the 9 row, they're all touching each other. So we know that for this 2 row, over in the top right, the square that we have to color in is either on top or below it, because it's only one other, because the 1 plus 1 would be 2. But we don't know which one it is, but we know that if it has to be one of those 2 and no others, then this one at the very top can be crossed off. And as you can see, it is in fact blank. And it's kind of a way to prove what you're doing, you know, kind of almost explaining it. And we can do that for a lot of things. I'm going to move on to these 7s we have in the top middle here. We have a lot of these 7s, so I want to get them out of the way. But we don't have anything quite so simple that I showed you guys. So let's go with this 7 row that has the X on it already. So we already know from the 9 row that there are 9 squares left. Well, one of them's already colored in. So how do we start figuring out which ones to color? Well, Like I said, they all have to be touching. So we don't know if it's going to be the one above the 7, but let's say it is, right? Let's say it is, then that'd be that square, the one below it that's already colored in, and then you'd have to have 5 more squares below it. So no matter what, whether or not that square above the colored in one is supposed to be colored in, we know that the 5 squares below are supposed to be colored in. So we can do that. We can color in those 5, but that's all we can do right now. Oh, actually one more. I forgot one. And now we are left with these 6 colored in, which brings me down to move on to another strategy we can use as something similar with the 2. So we see that the 7 row has 6 squares colored in. So it might be the one on top or the one on bottom, because 6 plus 1 would give us the full 7. And we know they have to be touching because it's the same number. And the fact that they're touching will be important in a moment, but first of all we need to work out the 7. So if we know it's going to be the one on top or the bottom, then the square at the very bottom must be blank, and so we can X that out. And you see slowly but surely we're just going around solving everything. And we can use that same strategy with these other 2 7s. So we see if there's 1 2 squares above it, then what's 7 minus the 1 2 is 5, plus the one that's colored in, or minus the one that's colored in rather. That's 4. So we go 1 2 3 4. Same thing here, 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. And that helped out a lot. That colored in a lot of squares for us. And we can also look. So these, of the 3 rows we just finished colored in, the 2 on the right, so they both have this little quirk about them where there's 3 squares in the bottom and 2 squares on the top. Well, there's this kind of rule of evenness that you'll see where if there's 2 squares on the top, there has to be 2 squares on the bottom. So that means these 2 are blank. So as you can see, there's the 2 and 2. And if you go to the 7 row we did first, you see the 1 and 1. The 2 row that we did earlier also has the 1 and 1. It's symmetrical, and that's usually how you know you're doing the right thing. And speaking of, I see the next row I want to take out, and that's this 5 row underneath the 9, the one going horizontally. So it has 1 and 2. Well, then it has that 4 right there, so we're going to do 1 2 3 4, either the 1 to the left or the 1 to the right. So this one all the way on the right has to be crossed off. And that just opened up something for us to do, because we just crossed off a square in that 2 row we did way earlier. And now there's only 1 square next to the colored in one for us to fill. And sure enough, that's correct. And we can finish crossing out the rest of those squares. And now we go down to this 1, this horizontal 1. And there's only 1 square left in that row, so we're going to color it in. Now this 3, next to the 2 row we finished, this vertical 3, as you can see there's a 3 and a 1. So when you have 2 different numbers, there has to be at least 1 blank space in between the 2 numbers. Is it always going to be 1? We have no clue. We have to try and figure that out for ourselves. But we know there's always going to be at least 1, so they won't be next to each other. So we see that there's this 1 square colored in, and we have 5 blank squares total. So we know that 3 of them have to be 3 of the 5 have to be colored in, but we don't know which ones they are. We see this 1 colored in, and because of that rule we used on the 7s, we see it's either going to be 2 above or 2 below. But since there's only 1 above, then it has to be 1 below. Oh, and as you can see, that just crossed out our 5 row for us. And then also using the rule of symmetry on that vertical 3 row, we're going to cross out that square on the bottom. Now, if we look at where we just crossed the X, that's actually a row, a 6. So you're going to see 2 vertical rows that are 6s. This bottom one is what we're going to focus on. So you can see all the squares on the left are X'd out. And we get 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's only 6 squares left. So we cross those out. And now that 6 row is complete. And then we go down a couple rows to this vertical 3. Same kind of deal. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 X'd out, and we see 1 colored in. Well, we know that they have to be touching. And we know it obviously can't be the ones that are already X'd out. So we do is 2, 3, just like that. There we go, that's the solution. And now we go to this vertical row that has the 2 and the 3. And we see that there's a space down here where there's a colored in square. But there's only 1 space above and below it. Well, that must be where the 3 is, so we'll color this in. Oh, and we finished up the 5 too. Then we have up here the 2, X on the bottom, so it must be above. Cross that one out. We have this rule of symmetry going on with this vertical 6 row, or this horizontal 6 row, so we won't mess with that for a while. Actually, we might just, because if you look vertically, this 3 and 1, we can actually do is look at the horizontal 5 and 2, and see over here for this block on the right, the one colored in, there's the X on the right, we color on the one on the left, and that finishes off the 3, so we cross that out. And now you can see we can complete that 6 because there's only 1 square left. And then, in that vertical row, where there's the 1, there's only 1 block left. So we just do that. And now for a kind of fun part. So we're going to see a lot of rows being cleared right here. So we go from this 5, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I crossed out both of those 7s. Very useful to us. But then also that 5 row is cleared out, so we can cross out that. And in both of these, there's only 1 block left. So we just color in those 2 blocks. And we get a nice little hummingbird. I hope that this little tutorial kind of showed you a good way to play the game. Obviously the best way to learn is just to experience it for yourself. I'm going to keep showing you guys new puzzles that I do. I might change up the difficulty every now and again. I'll try to take it slow for my first few videos so that you guys can kind of learn alongside my teaching. But I do tend to take these a little bit quickly. If you want to see some of that quicker gameplay or even some like story times or Q&As or anything like that, just be sure to let me know. That's it for today, so I hope you all have a good rest of your day. I'll see you next time.